We're going on a deep dive into the real-life psychic experiments behind the hit TV show Stranger Things. Hello, all my beautiful little unicorns, and welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time that you're on my channel, my name is Vanessa Somuayina, and this is Lore or More, a series where we explore and deep dive into the dark facts, as well as the little-known history of well-known stories and real-life events in a bid to find out which parts are lore and which parts could possibly be more. And if you like what you see and hear today, make sure that you don't forget to subscribe as well as hit that notification bell in order to never miss another video. But now let's get into the first episode of Lore or More. So if you've ever been on my channel before, you're most likely very familiar with these tarot cards, a method of divination in which a person seeks clarity as well as knowledge through supernatural means. But what if you didn't need these cards? What if someone offered you an opportunity to enhance your psychic abilities? And what if they offered you the chance, but saying no wasn't really an option? In today's Lore or More, we will be exploring rumors as well as conspiracies surrounding government experiments into psychic abilities. I warn you though, these stories are wild. We've got telepathy, use of psychedelic substances, kidnapped children, plus a monster from another dimension that's running wild. So buckle up and strap yourself in, my beautiful babies of the zodiac, because we're going on a deep dive into the real-life psychic experiments behind the hit TV show Stranger Things. Let's get into it. Story 1. MKUltra. Back in 2016, when season 1 of Stranger Things debuted on Netflix, show creators Matt and Ross Duffer explained that they wanted the supernatural elements of the TV show to be grounded in science. And to achieve this, they interwove a real government project called MKUltra into the storyline. In the show, Eleven's mother, while pregnant with her, is one of MKUltra's test subjects. Dr. Brenner used LSD and sensory deprivation to experiment on her, unwittingly imbuing Eleven with psychic abilities. And in real life, the MKUltra project was created by the CIA in 1953. Their aim was to develop mind control techniques that could give America an advantage against Russia in the Cold War. And guys, if this sounds far-fetched, I promise you it isn't. The declassified CIA documents have since been released to the public and are easily available online. MKUltra started off as a volunteer program, but soon developed into something far more sinister. Unwitting participants were subject to physical as well as mental harm through psychedelic substance use, sleep deprivation, and other experimental means. For one reason or another, the project was eventually shut down in 1965. Some people will tell you that the experiments were deemed too dangerous, while others will tell you that the experiments were a bust and there were simply no psychic abilities that could be harnessed through these experiments. But there are others who believe that MKUltra continued, just under a different name. Story 2. The Montauk Project. Our second story begins in 1974. An electrical engineer by the name Preston Nichols identified a powerful and unexpected frequency on his equipment. Fascinated by its origin, he tracked the frequency using his radio receiver and an old TV antenna. Its source? The Montauk State Park, a sprawling national park made up of forests and beaches at the easternmost tip of Long Island. The signal was coming from the abandoned Montauk Air Force Base, where an enormous radar tower loomed over the skyline. The eerie decommissioned military base is a relic from the Cold War. Its giant and rusting radar system is almost 30 yards tall, and the base is plastered with signs that say no trespassing, danger, and do not enter. Security still patrols the area, and if they catch you on the premise, they won't hesitate to make an arrest. Seems like quite a lot of security for an abandoned building in a U.S. state park. The Montauk Air Force Station and the following story served as the inspiration for the multi-award-winning TV show Stranger Things. In fact, when the show was originally pitched to Netflix, the working title was simply Montauk. Nichols, despite the signs telling him to keep out, found his way into the Air Force Base and began to explore. Years later, he returned with his friend Duncan Cameron. Cameron had never been to the base before, but he seemed to know the place like the back of his hand. On entering the transmitter room, Cameron fell into a sort of trance-like state, and he began sharing information about secret experiments that he and Nichols had been involved in right there at the base. It was almost as though just being there in the building had unlocked some sort of long-lost memories within the two men. Over the next 6 years, Nichols and Cameron uncovered more memories of assorted experiments that took place in the base, including the code name for the project in which they worked, the Montauk Project. According to Nichols and Cameron, scientists working on the Montauk Project were there to do just one job: harness the ability of mind control. And just because MKUltra had shut down didn't mean that it was gone. Perhaps the scientists just needed more powerful equipment, and the Montauk base was already outfitted with the equipment these researchers needed, including the radar antenna left over from the Cold War. According to Nichols, the scientists believed it was powerful enough to broadcast a frequency that could alter the human mind. Cameron explains that he played a pivotal role in the experiments. He possessed innate psychic abilities that allowed him to withstand intense electromagnetic frequencies. He was allegedly ordered to sit in a special chair known as the Montauk chair. It was located inside of a shielded room, and above it was the radar. Multiple gigawatts of electricity was generated, enough to power a town, and was fed through metal coils into the Montauk chair and therefore into Cameron. It was using this chair that scientists explored the concept of telepathy, and according to the two gentlemen, the experiments were a success. Cameron would think of an object in his mind, such as an apple, and on the computer monitor would appear an image of an apple. Not content with this result, the scientists actually pushed the experiments even further. Using the power of the transmitter, Cameron was able to conjure objects out of thin air. Sometimes these thoughts would materialize as a hologram, but sometimes they would be solid matter. On one particular day, Cameron sat in the Montauk chair as usual and tried to conjure an image in his mind when a spiral-like wormhole erupted from the antenna. This wormhole was beyond anything that the scientists could have ever imagined. Forget telepathy, this portal held the potential for time travel itself. But we'll come back to this portal later as it links to another story. But trust me when I say it will be worth the wait. Story 3. Underground facilities. Most of the information about the Montauk Project comes from Cameron and Nichols, and who knows how reliable a source these two men truly are. And it's highly likely that at this point you're thinking, Vanessa, this story definitely falls into the lore category. Well, I thought so too. Until, that is, I started uncovering claims from other people that backed up Nichols and Cameron's stories. And one such story is from a man named Stuart Swerdlow. When Swerdlow was a child, he began experiencing strange visions after he went to bed each night. He would wake up strapped to a table, naked and paralyzed. He was completely unable to speak. The rooms in which he found himself were dark and dirty, surrounded by rock walls and water pooling on the floors. Now an adult, Swerdlow believes that these visions were actually memories. He believes that the Montauk researchers were kidnapping him and other children in order to develop an army of brainwashed civilians trained through a mind control program By breaking down the kidnapped children's will, the scientists could destroy their minds in a way that enabled them to be programmed and reprogrammed. And Swerdlow is not alone in his allegations. Fellow Long Islander James Bruce recalls his horrifying experiences in the depths of Montauk. Bruce describes how researchers forced him to ingest LSD in a room called the Acid House. It is Bruce's belief that these substances made his mind more susceptible to reprogramming. Another report came in from Long Island resident Christopher Garianto. In 1983, when he was about 8 years old, Garianto found strange objects on the beach near the base. He described them as large iron globes with spikes sticking out of them. He was about to ask his father what these unusual items were when someone dressed in a military uniform appeared out of nowhere. The stranger told Garianto and his father that they couldn't go any further along the beach. This event sparked a lifelong interest in the Montauk project for Garianto. And over the years, Garianto has made multiple trips to Montauk. On one trip, he noticed manhole covers throughout the entire area. In Garianto's mind, this seemed to back up the legend that the Montauk experiments took place in a network of underground tunnels. Garianto returned on his next visit with a team of geophysicists. They used electrical resistivity imaging to scan the ground. What they found was incredible. 20 feet underground laid a concrete reinforced structure that was 30 feet in diameter. Brian Minnick, a local resident, says that he and his friends used to visit the Montauk Air Force Base in the early 90s. They were teenagers at the time, and they had fun trying to sneak into the base for laughs. On one occasion, Minnick and his friends brought a VHS camcorder with them and recorded themselves making their way through the dingy and decrepit underground system of tunnels. The teenagers weren't able to explore most of the underground areas as the rooms were flooded. Most surprisingly, video footage seems to confirm the existence of the Acid House. Remember, this is the location where scientists allegedly gave LSD to the kidnapped subjects. It is a small building with walls covered in colorful and psychedelic shapes. These designs are not graffiti though. The paint job is very neat, and you can see the ceiling has been precisely taped off. And in a terrifying turn of events, Minnick's video footage ends with several clips of him and his friends being chased by government-issued black SUVs. I could understand if regular security patrol was chasing away Minnick and his friends, or even if someone maybe called the police, but this looks to be the government. Why would a decommissioned base need such high security? And to what lengths will they go to keep its secrets under lock and key? Story 4. The Philadelphia Experiment. Our fourth story is so wild, you won't believe your ears. You recall Duncan Cameron from the Montauk Project, the one who opened a portal with his mind? According to himself, he wasn't just a part of the 70s and 80s Montauk Project. He was also involved in something called the Philadelphia Experiment from 1943. The Philadelphia Experiment is currently unverified by the government, but it is well cited online as being truth. The story goes that during World War II, the U.S. military attempted to develop cloaking technology that could hide the battleship USS Eldridge from enemy radar. The experiments, however, went horribly wrong as the USS Eldridge disappeared entirely, teleporting the entire crew miles away to Virginia. When the ship returned, the men aboard were no longer the same as they were when they had left. Some of them had physically fused to the ship, their limbs binded to the ship's structure. Others had their mind erased. According to ex-naval officer Al Bielek, he and his brother escaped this gruesome fate by jumping off the ship right before it vanished. Unfortunately, they ended up experiencing something just as strange. Al and his brother, when they attempted to jump into the ocean, fell into a wormhole that sent them through space and time. They were spat out exactly 40 years later, in 1983, but were separated. Don't worry though, Al Bielek and his brother were eventually reunited because guess what? Cameron, our psychic friend who opens an interdimensional portal, believes that he is Bielek's brother. I warned you, this story is wild. The tale of teleportation and time travel intrigued researchers in Long Island, and they soon realized they'd stumble onto an exciting discovery. The men who had been aboard the USS Eldridge were now susceptible to mind control. When the teleportation had activated, it created a reality where time did not exist. This is something a human mind is unable to process, and so the crewmen's minds were broken and they were no longer able to think for themselves. A discovery like this would be of clear interest to the military. American officers would simply be able to flip a switch, scramble the brains of the enemy, and they would surrender. So we've got Cameron in 1983 sitting in the Montauk chair. He's trying to envision an apple and make it appear in front of him, but instead he conjures an interdimensional portal. What happens next is a madcap adventure in which Nichols, Cameron, and his supposed brother Bielek travel through this portal in 1983 to the day that the USS Eldridge disappeared in 1943. Their mission, with the help of a Hungarian mathematician who faked his own death, was to destroy the USS Eldridge generators. If you recall, the USS Eldridge traveled through space and time during a cloaking experiment gone wrong. According to the Hungarian mathematician, unless the generators on board the ship were destroyed, the ship would be lost in the vortex of time and would never return to Philadelphia. As the ship's crew wouldn't think to damage their own equipment, plus they were busy being driven mad by the time shift, it was up to Nichols, Cameron, and Bielek to save the day. Once they had completed their mission, the three men flew back through the portal and landed on the cold concrete floor of the Montauk base. The mission, although it was considered a success, did not sit right with many of the researchers and scientists. They believed that these experiments had gone way too far. It was time to put an end to the Montauk project. And so Cameron was strapped once more to the Montauk chair. A member of the team approached him, leant in close, and whispered something into his ear. Whatever was said certainly had a profound effect because Cameron used his psychic abilities to manifest an object, but instead of an apple or a basketball, this time he created something much worse. Using the spontaneous creation technology, Cameron manifested and unleashed a monster on the Montauk Air Force Base. The creature was described as being hairy, around 10 feet in height, and violent. It ran amok in the base, destroying equipment and killing innocent employees. Nichols had expected the monster to vanish once it destroyed the equipment that had helped create it, but unfortunately no. The beast continued its relentless ramage. Nichols grabbed an acetylene torch and crept into the base's power station where he cut all the wires he could find. The equipment came to a halt and the beast faded into the ether. Behind it, the portal was closed, and with it ended the Montauk project. Story 5, the Monroe Institute. So is that it? The government tried its little experiments, decided it was too dangerous or too ineffective, and then just gave up from there? And ceased all operations? Not quite. Our final story is about a private company that's based in Virginia. To this day, this company sells courses on how you can harness your psychic abilities. Now, before I get started, I want to stress that this video is in no way affiliated or sponsored by the Monroe Institute. I have no affiliation to them whatsoever, but I think they're worth mentioning as we come to the end of our video. The Monroe Institute is a scientific institution focused on the studies of consciousness. On their homepage, they say, "You are more than your physical body." The Monroe Institute considers itself the world leader in human consciousness exploration. It was founded in the early 1970s as an educational and research organization by Robert Monroe. Robert, alongside other members at the Institute, designed various types of music, audio tapes, and other tools to help their students use non-physical aspects of their higher consciousness. This includes harnessing their physical abilities. In an interview with the current director of the Monroe Institute, he describes how everyone has psychic abilities. The Institute just provides you with tools to help harness and unlock them. The reason I mention them in this video today is because the CIA actually took special interest in the Monroe Institute. They believe there might have been some truth and validity to what the Institute is teaching. The investigation took place in the 1980s, but in the early 2000s, the reports were declassified. If you're interested in learning more about what the Monroe Institute teaches, you can find the declassified reports online. As with most things in life, these stories about psychic experiments are complicated. The truth and fiction are so wrapped up in one another, it's difficult to put things into neat little piles of truth and questionable. But we know for sure that MKUltra exists. The CIA have confirmed this themselves. The Montauk project is harder to prove. By themselves, Nichols, Cameron, and Bialik are not the most reliable of sources. But then others have come forth to provide us with experiences that are more measured and add credibility to the original stories. So, what do you guys think? How much of these stories are lore, and how much of them are more? Can the government really teach us mind control techniques? And what the heck was that monster that Cameron manifested? If you have any thoughts on that one, please let me know below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you about what you think. As always, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious!